Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for making the journey all the way over to the Santa Rosa room. I thought we'd wait till right now and to get going so that everyone could come across. My name is Jeff Shaner, and I'm the product manager for Collector for ArcGIS, as well as a number of our other products. And with me is Doug Morgenthaler. Doug is the product owner lead for Collector, and he's sitting down here it's a wonderful room, isn't it, with the pillars and everything? Can all of you see okay? I'll try to dance around a little bit for people behind the pillar, but not too much as well. So what we wanted to do today is kind of go through a little bit of an overview of Collector. I'd like to ask how many people here have used Collector? Wow, I guess I can go quick on the overview then, huh? Talk a little bit about how it's used, talk about adoption, and Doug's going to do a bunch of demos, and we'll jump into where we're headed as well, and do some demonstrations around what's coming next. So as you all know, Collector is a map-centric field data collection app. We've had it in the market since 2014 or so, maybe longer. I don't know, the years are blending together. And we've built it on, hopefully you can see to the bottom of the screen, on the iOS platform, on the Android platform, and more recently this past year on the Windows 10 platform as well. And Doug has all of those platforms to do his demos today. So he's taken all of the ports and left me with VGA to present with. We've had a series of releases that have introduced a number of key capabilities, and right now I think we focus most often on talking about how Collector can work in any environment, whether that be in a connected experience where you have connectivity to a network when you're out in the field, as well as offline. So there's a way to work in both an online and offline mode. And this past year we introduced the support for external GNSS receivers to capture spatial data with higher accuracy than what is embedded inside of the smartphone device or tablet device that you use. How many people have used high accuracy capabilities with Collector? A few of you. All right, that's awesome. So we're going to dive into that a little bit more as well. So how is Collector being... Do I have the wrong deck? I'm wondering if I've got my wrong PowerPoint deck now that I see the slide, because I swear I updated it. Just a second. Because you can see I've got a lot of decks on the go. No, we'll go with this, and if I crash and burn, just bear with me. There are a lot of ways that Collector for ArcGIS is being used today, and here's just a couple of basic examples. I've got more screenshots in another deck somewhere. Obviously I updated the wrong deck. But some of the traditional use cases that we see are doing an asset inventory, going out into the field to collect new data that becomes a part of the GIS, being able to ground truth information that's already in the GIS, actually noting map change requests where you're out in the field and you find something that's incorrect about your GIS and need to mark that as being changed. Quite often we see utility workflows where you don't actually want to modify the utility network out in the field, but you want to be able to mark where problems exist and update it later in the office. We added support about 2 years ago for relationship classes inside of the geodatabase, so that then you could start to use Collector to do inspection workflows and maintenance-based workflows, like the gentleman that's inspecting the culvert. So we've seen a lot of workflows where customers are using Collector not to capture new data, but to do inspection reports where they're updating information that's related to an asset. Marking violations. One of the interesting use cases, which I thought I had in the slide deck, that we've seen emerge is actually using Collector with an external GNSS receiver to capture control points and then flying a drone and using the control points to geo-rectify the imagery and scenes that are created from the drone to map software. Anyone tried that? Wow, a couple people. Yeah, that's awesome. But there's a lot of additional use cases that we've seen as well. We've seen a lot of work in emergency management with Collector as well. Search and rescue, a lot of things that we didn't really expect. How are we doing? This is some statistics against ArcGIS Online. Of course, we also support your on-premises portal, but we don't get any statistics out of that, so I can't report on how we're doing with it. Here you see some of the growth of Collector, and I picked out the iOS and Android platform, and you can see they're both on the same scale. What we can get, we don't have any statistical methods to kind of see usage within the application yet. That's something that we're working on, but we need to maintain our FSMA compliance with ArcGIS Online, so we have to build it all ourselves. We can't use third-party products to do that. But we can get these unique login events that happen through using Collector when you sign into an organization. About 60% of all of the ArcGIS Online organizations are using Collector every day. And we see through the bar charts here, active use that's happened and the growth on each of the platforms over the last 3 years. And at the very bottom, you probably can't see that from the back, some of the major functionality that we released each year. We'd like to think that that is somehow correlated to the adoption. The interesting number I'll just point out, because there's always this question about the duality of iOS and Android. If you look at it, in 2016, averaged across all of the months, we have uniquely about 96,500 logins a month. On Android, it's almost half that. So it seems like there's quite a bit more adoption within the customers that we serve of iOS and Android. So I just thought that might be some useful information for all of you. I'm sure you all have your own heated discussions about iOS versus Android versus, well, Windows Phone is pretty pathetic, so I won't talk about that. Anyway, moving on, as I don't need to spend a lot of time on this either, since you all know Collector pretty well by the sounds of it. A Collector uses web maps, and the web maps that Collector takes advantage of have one or more layers from feature services, and at least one of those feature services that are in that map must be editable. We write a unique keyword into the web map JSON that lets Collector pick that up. So if there's an editable feature service in the map, then when you sign into Collector, we can actually see those maps because they have that specific keyword. If you want to take those maps offline and for that little download button to appear, those maps, those feature layers need to belong to feature services, and everything in there must be coming from a sync-enabled feature service. I think we'll talk a little bit about that. And of course, the way that you share maps for your field workforce is through the sharing mechanisms inside of your portal, which is through groups. So as you share maps out to specific groups, those groups can, those users can, that are members of those groups can download and use it. I'm sure you're all aware that Collector also requires that the named user be a level 2 named user to use it. So really going over some basics for you. Supported types for these feature layers, both hosted layers within ArcGIS Online as well as on-premises feature services. How many people are using on-premises feature services with Collector? A good chunk of you. And how many are using a version transaction model? About half of those. Interesting. How many of you are also managing the versions yourselves with Python or have somebody else that does that? It's like, oh God, yes, it's me. Clearly feature services are important to Collector, right? Through the feature service, there's some interesting things that are there. I don't know if Doug will get into any of that in the demo, but there is something that was introduced recently into ArcGIS Online's feature services, hosted feature services, called feature service views. Feature service views are actually kind of interesting from a Collector perspective as well, and we can talk about that a little bit later. But through the feature service, you can actually configure some of the user experience of Collector using some of the editing options that are available. It looks like all of the, because you made me go VGA, I'm sure, all of the screenshots look like crap. But there are different editing operations that you can control against the feature surface that change behavior. And also in the web map, there's the concept of advanced mode for synchronization too, for the offline capabilities. Have you all discovered those? Hands up for those that have discovered that. Okay, so not too many people. Let me just take a second and explain through the context of a scenario that happened with us and our support team. One of those use cases that I mentioned where Collector is being used is in emergency response activities. Well, is anyone from CAL FIRE here before I say anything bad? Nobody? All right, I'm going to go ahead, although I am recorded. Crap. So we've had a number of wildfires in California, believe it or not, and some recently that have happened actually fairly close to our headquarters in Esri, just up in the Cajon Pass. Well, CAL FIRE, working with various agencies, have been using Collector. Now, in part, they're using it for damage assessment. So after a fire has gone through an area, they need to go and assess the damage to structures that happened there. And with the wildfire event, quite often what happens is that the inspectors that go out and do those assessments, they start from a tent, a low bandwidth environment, right, where there's a MiFi there, and they're actually downloading a map to their device, and they're going out and doing these inspection reports. And at each property, they might actually capture 4 or 5 different photos at each location. And then they all come back at the end of their time in the field, and they try to sync at the same time. I think a few of you could understand what the problem with that might be, right? So the problem, if you weren't aware, is that Collector by default and the feature service by default has a bidirectional sync process, meaning that if I'm out as an inspector and I capture 4 photos on a property, Doug is also an inspector out there, captures 4 photos at a property, and we both sync. I am uploading 4 photos in my feature, and then Doug is also trying to sync. Doug is uploading a feature and 4 photos, but he's also downloading back my 4 photos. And if there's 10 of you and you're working against a MiFi, boom, right? So we did some optimizations around the synchronization workflow this past year to really account for that type of scenario where you're a collector, and first of all, we let you scale the size of the photos so that, you know, if you're taking a big panorama, that sucker could be quite large and it's probably not even going to upload anyway on a MiFi. So we did some work there. Those are collector settings. And then in the web map, you can set the directionality of that sync process and whether or not to bring back down the attachment. So you can really optimize how you work in these low bandwidth connections. Spent way too much time on that, but I thought it was important given how many people were aware of it. Pop-ups drive the form experience inside of Collector. Of course, that's first driven from the way that you author your data model and the map templates inside of ArcMap. But the pop-ups really drive that experience, so I wanted to mention that. I think most of you are aware of that. And that includes the related tables. To capture photos, we use attachments as the data type within the information model. Last thing before we get to a demo from Doug, I wanted to mention this because it's often not known, is that we work closely with our solutions team to make sure that there's templates inside of ArcGIS Online that can quickly get you going. So there's actually over 60 collector templates that are inside of ArcGIS Online. And if you're actually in the My Content view, you're going to show that, Doug. You can click Create Feature Layer and get at all of these different templates. And There's even ways to modify some of the schema in ArcGIS Online. It's a bit daunting to do that, but you can do it. They've also made all of these templates available in a pro project, so you can do it on premises now too. So you can go to the solutions website to get at that. And with that, I'll pass it over to Doug to do a demo. What number would you like, Doug?
Let's go with 3.
3? Oh.
Doing Jeff is HDMI.
Okay. All right, so let's take a quick tour. I know many of you are already familiar with Collector and are familiar with how you create a web map, but I thought it would be useful to go through and highlight some of those capabilities regarding the feature layer templates that Jeff mentioned just a couple of minutes ago. So here I am, I'm in ArcGIS Online, and I'm going to go to my content, and I'm going to go through the process of creating a feature layer that I can use for Collector. All right, so I'm going to go to Create, Feature Layer, and you'll see that we've got a few ways where you can easily spin up a new feature layer that you can use for data collection. We've got a number of different types of categories here for different types of layers. Again, these are mapping very closely to the work that is done by our solutions teams. So if we go to electric utilities, let's grab this hazards. It's a friendly looking dog. And go ahead and create our new feature layer. Now, I'm showing you this in ArcGIS Online. These templates are also available in Portal for ArcGIS 10.5. This particular layer only has one sublayer, so I'm just going to go ahead. I can, of course, rename that if I'd like to. And then I need to specify a location. We'll just kind of ballpark this here. And our title, session hazards. Got our tags, and we'll go ahead and create that layer. So again, what it's doing is it's going off and it's creating that hosted feature service and creating that service item in my organization. Now, the great thing about this is that's based on industry standard workflows, industry standard symbology. It's already pre-made. So thinking about things like emergency response, there's damage assessment templates so that you can quickly get up and running with those. All right, so we're going to go ahead and take our new layer here, and we're going to add that to our web map. We do not want to be in Morongo Valley today. It's even hotter than it is here. All right. So the first thing we're going to do is, of course, I could continue updating this. I can modify the pop-up. I can change fields. I can change the visibility, all of those things. Change the symbology if I'd like. In this case, I'm not going to do any of that. I'm just going to go ahead and save this web map. Give it a tag. And we'll go ahead and save that map. Now, Jeff mentioned it briefly, but the other thing I need to do, of course, as the GIS supervisor, I'd need to be sharing this out with my field workers. So I'm going to go ahead and share that out to a particular group. And it'll also have that share my feature layer that's also in this map. And now I'm done. So pretty quickly, I can take something that's fit for purpose for a given scenario of what I might need to be doing from a data collection. That also includes inspections. We do have a number of templates that use related records for things like hydrant inspections and other things. All right, so now I'm going to switch gears, and we're going to move to, this is going to be a road show of devices, so you guys will have to bear with me. We're going to move over to my iPhone here. And we're going to launch Collector. I've already signed in. I'm just going to refresh. And I should see session hazards. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and open our map. Now, Collector allows you to capture information based on your GPS location. Now that can be points, that can be lines, that can be polygons. So any of those three are types you can collect with Collector. But the basic workflow is pretty simple. Again, I have a number of different types of features that I can collect. So I have a violent person, and I can
Hopefully
say
that's no one in here today.
a presenter colleague is harassing me.
Great, now HR is going to be on.
And we do offer, for things where there is a set list of items, of course, I can, this is definitely pending. And of course, I want to make sure that I can document this. Smile, Jeff. And once I'm finished with that, of course, unfortunately, my accuracy is pretty poor inside, so I'm just going to go ahead and manually set my location instead of using my GPS. And I'll go ahead and submit that feature. So what's happened there, just in a quick demo, is the fact we've created a web map, we've shared that. Once I'm out on the device, I can open that map, I can collect a feature, and that feature was sent, along with its attached photo, immediately back to the office. So people who are in the office can immediately start interacting with that. Hopefully HR has seen this and they're going to come save me from Jeff. But just a quick overview of some of the capabilities within Collector. Now there are other aspects. The primary flow, of course, is collecting data, but also editing existing data. So this might be inspections. In this case, if I made a mistake, Jeff really wasn't harassing me, I can go ahead and I can edit that, or I can delete that. But we'll go ahead and leave that for now. But in general, just a real easy flow. And again, I'm showing you this on the iPhone, but this is also available on Android, phones and tablets, as well as Windows 10 devices. So
cool. Thanks, Doug. Uh-oh. Is he not going to like the HDMI cable? That's going to be karma for me. Try putting that back in. Come on. All right, I guess I'm back to VGA. Wow. You can have your HDMI back, Doug.
thanks.
So 10.4, wanted to talk a little bit about the highlights of 10.4. One of the most important ones, of course, being high accuracy data collection. So inside of Collector, in its settings, now you can set what we call a location provider, and that can be a receiver that's Bluetooth paired to your smartphone or tablet. You can also define what's called a location profile. So if you are using a real-time connection, an RTK network, anyone use RTK? A few of you. The location profile lets you define the coordinate system, or set the coordinate system of your map, define what the coordinate system is of the base station, and then choose an appropriate datum transformation so that as those positions are coming in their local coordinate system, and maybe your map is in Web Mercator or WGS84, that you don't lose that accuracy that you received by connecting to that external source. We let you attach accuracy information to your data as well. Those are available through a set of Python scripts that we provide out in a GitHub repository. And if you lose accuracy or the connection to that external receiver, we'll pop alerts and notifications to you. I wanted to show a few pictures here of different, so we've worked with a number of different manufacturers, receiver manufacturers. I've highlighted a few of them here. We've worked with Trimble, obviously. This is a Trimble R2 receiver. We ourselves went out to the LA Coliseum and did some high accuracy mapping with it before flying a drone to capture imagery and then correct it, like I talked about earlier. Bad Elf for a lower cost solution that doesn't support L1, L2 band, but you can get a decent accuracy out of it. It can work with Collector as well. Leica with their Xeno 20, this was actually me at a soccer practice. Yes, I'm that annoying dad that brings their work to the soccer game. Connected to an Esri base station where I've got 1 centimeter accuracy. This is one of our early adopters through the beta program we had, a guy named Travis Anderson with Leax Water District that was marking fire hydrants with an EOS Aero 200. We blogged about him, our water team did a webinar about him, and now apparently in Leax area, he's a local celebrity. Everybody's coming to him. He's like, I didn't realize this would happen, which is kind of cool. So we worked with a number of vendors, and it's really important from the Apple perspective that we worked with those vendors because all of them need to be certified through Apple's MFI program in order to Bluetooth pair to those iOS devices. So there's a distinct contract with those vendors, and we're whitelisted as an application that can be used by them. And we provide that list on our documentation website, and there's more than what I've mentioned here. So. One other thing I should mention on that really quick, I'll try to be really quick. Collector does not capture z-values today. So if you're looking at elevation value, like if you are using a pole mount, the scripts are very important to you because we do have a script that once you will capture the raw height. We also, in the location profile, let you set the antenna height as well. And then in the scripts, we'll actually convert using vertical transformation from the local RTK correction that you receive, the proper elevation value, and write out a Z-enabled feature class. So if you weren't aware, that's how we model it today. In the future, with the new runtime and some of the new development work that we're doing, we'll be able to store those Z-values directly inside a Z-enabled geometry and extend the location profile to not only support horizontal but vertical datums as well. So Collector, the other thing we did in Collector is added app integration. We did this in the context first of workforce. So that was the main driver. So if you come to our 5:30 presentation right before the party, lucky us, we got that slot, you can add an app integration such that from a work assignment, you can invoke Collector. And what actually happens is that it uses a URL scheme to pass a web map to Collector. It remotely will open up Collector if Collector's not already open on the device. And it'll go to the location, so it actually passes a WGS84 based coordinate from Workforce into Collector and drops a pin at the location of the work assignment. So it takes you right to that work. And because we did that, and we also integrate with Navigator, by the way, so from within Collector you can remotely open up Navigator if you want to get turn-by-turn directions to the location of your work you need to do. We took that URL scheme and we made it available. So if you have your own application that you want to integrate with Collector, you can go to this GitHub repository that we have, and this, I believe the slides will be made available, or you could just search GitHub for Collector and find it. And you can do that integration with your own application if you like. So back to Doug to show you a 10.4 demo.
Okay, so let's take a quick look at some of those new functions that came in 10.4 across the platform for Collector. So the first one Jeff mentioned there at the end was the ability to remotely call Collector from your application, a web page, SMS, think of all sorts of interesting ideas, including QR codes. So here I've got in my browser, I've basically just got the URL scheme that we use. So you can see that we've got the transport, the item ID, which is the web map that we want to open, and the center. So that's the location in which we're going to drop the pin. Now, you can see that I don't actually have Collector running, but I am signed in to Collector. So of course, obviously, I would have to do that as part of the process if I wasn't already signed in. So we'll go ahead and just launch this. And it already asked me the first time to say, hey, do you want to allow Collector to be opened? But you can see that it goes and opens that map that corresponds with that item ID, and then drops a pin at that location. So a really good way if you're trying to get people to a particular work assignment, this is exactly what we use in Workforce, so that you can drive people to the work that they need to do from other systems. All right, so we're going to start switching through some devices here. There's a few other things that I wanted to show you. Before we leave here, though, I'll just do the quick shout out to our GitHub pages. That wasn't supposed to go there. So we have been publishing quite a few GitHub repos. So this is our Collector integration repo. This is where we document our URL schemes. And we also have helper classes for Python, .NET, Swift, and Java for you to integrate into your apps. Now, this is the one specific for Collector integration. There's also one for Navigator. We'll also be generating one for Explorer as well. And I think that might actually be out and available. So take advantage of the ability to sort of integrate Collector into your workflow, into your larger workflow. We are also, Jeff talked a little bit about some of the capabilities for high accuracy, and we'll go through the process here of how you can actually link up to an external GNSS receiver and the process you need to use. But we do offer a number of sort of Python scripts and utilities for you to deal with like do vertical transformations, and you can use those within ArcMap or ArcGIS Pro. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to hopefully find, in the litany of devices you guys have, our receiver here. So let's see if we can find our, otherwise I might have to go grab it from the back of the room. I was hoping I could get a position here. No such luck. All right, we're on the move. I'm going to go grab it and try and bring it a little closer. Hey, Scott, can you? Thanks, man. I didn't have a position anyway, so I guess it doesn't matter. Hopefully it shows up in the list now. You guys like charge 2s, clearly. So let's see if we get. There we go. All right, so we're just going to go through the basic process of how you pair this. Hopefully your office doesn't have this many devices in this closer proximity. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to pair our receiver, and this is just a Bad Elf surveyor. Part of the pairing process, I need to verify that yes, this is the one I'm interested in pairing, and I have to tap that on the device as well as here on my Windows device. So once I've done that, I can now use that external GNSS receiver as a location provider. So we're going to go through the steps of how you can use an external data location provider within Collector to get those highly accurate positions. So there's really a few pieces of information that you need to specify as part of your setup process. One is I need to set my location accuracy. So typically, you guys are already familiar with this, but this is going to limit the positions that I can use for data collection. So I might be interested in doing something sub-meters, maybe 3 feet. The next thing I need to do is I need, of course, to say where I want my positions from. By default, on all 3 platforms, we use the integrated receiver that's on the device. In this case, we're going to go ahead and add a new receiver. You can see I've got my bad elf here listed in my list of devices. We'll go ahead and use that one. As part of the configuration process, I can specify the antenna height. So if I am going to mount this on the top of a range pole, I can say if I'm on the top of a 2-meter pole, I can put that in there and that'll be adjusted for the elevation that we write out in the metadata. So at this point, I'm just going to leave it at 0. And now I can switch to have collector use that external source. So one important thing to note, collector does not kind of fall back to the integrated receiver. Jeff mentioned that we notify you if, for example, you lose your Bluetooth connection, the battery dies, whatever the case may be, so that you know that when you're using collector with an external GNSS source, every time you're using it for collection, you're getting that highly accurate point that you're interested in. Okay, so the last thing we need to do is set what we call a location profile. And again, the location profile allows you to specify the coordinates that are coming in from the receiver and transforming them in a way that you maintain that accuracy once they're pushed into your feature layer. So by default, we have a profile. We've always had one, we're just sort of exposing it. This is basically, we're assuming WGS 84. In this case, if you are getting corrected positions from an RTK network or SBOS, you need to specify this information so that you know exactly what transformation you want to use. So in this case, my positions are coming in on NAD 1983, 2011. And that's the positions that are coming in from my receiver. I now need to say what coordinate system is my map using. So that can, of course, be either geographic or projected. In this case, my map is Web Mercator. Now, the last bit of information that I can specify is where will I be doing collection. So the reason this is important is this helps us provide the best list of transformations that are appropriate for where you're going to be working. So you've given us the source coordinate system, you've given us the target coordinate system. The area will help us figure out which one is best suited for you. So let's head over here to Palm Springs. And you'll notice that I have a list of transformations datum transformations that I can pick from. This list is ordered. So the most appropriate one based on what you've told us to this point is at the top of the list. So when in doubt, go for number 1. And then finally, we're going to specify a name. So we'll go NAD 83 to Web Mercator. And then we'll go ahead and add that. And then much like we did with the provider, we can have any number of these if I'm working in different areas. And then I can go ahead and switch to that. And now I'm ready to go. So I've set my location accuracy. I've set my location profile so it knows how to transform those coordinates and it knows where it's getting those coordinates from. All right, so let's flip back to our map here. And let's take a look at a few other pieces.
You have no position.
I have no positions. It's pretty poor.
Oh,
and I just lost my connection.
Hey,
so here's the notifications.
You couldn't have timed that better.
Really couldn't have. So what you would have seen in the bottom left-hand or right-hand corner here is what we call a GPS badge. We'll see if this guy didn't die.
Didn't it die?
It didn't die.
Oh.
I did charge it before the session, so it wasn't that. I'll show you guys when I flip over to the other session, but basically that badge gives you a real-time readout of what position am I using, what receiver am I using. The reason I don't have it here, of course, is because I don't actually have my connection. Might have been restored. So you can see here that I got, I'm getting positions from my Bad Elf GPS. If I was getting positions, I would get things like the fixed type. I would get things like my horizontal and vertical accuracy, how many satellites I have. So this can help me if I'm not getting the position I'm wanting. This can help me sort of deduce what might be going on. I might be getting a source multipath, might be a bad time of day. There's lots of factors in there. Okay, so the last thing I wanted to show you, which obviously I can't do because I can't collect anything on this map, is our metadata. So one of the things that's really important if you're going to go out and do data collection is that you need to, oftentimes if you're spending that kind of time going out and doing collection, you want to know how good was that position. You know, if it's for an underground valve, I want to know, was it within 3 feet or was it within 30 centimeters when I got to go out and do some digging. So I collected these positions when I was in Vegas, which some time ago. But
what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas.
Well,
guess not.
This has all been sanitized.
Not in your GIS.
So you can see here that I'm getting a range of information here. So I've added well-known fields to my feature class. And when I publish that service, we automatically populate those values for you. So you can see here that I've got things like the receiver that was used to collect that. In this case, it was a Trimble receiver. What was my horizontal accuracy? So slightly less than a meter. But also other information that might be interesting: PDOP, HDOP, VDOP. How many satellites did I have? What type of fix did I have? Was it autonomous? Was it RTK? Again, all information that you can use to help assess how good that point is. And with that, I'll flip over here and just talk about our collector tools. So one of the tools that we have is Python scripts that are available that'll add all of those fields for you to a feature class in ArcMap or ArcGIS Pro. Of course, you can add these manually, but this is just an easy way for you to quickly add those if you're interested in working with that information. We do populate all of those any attributes that we get, even if you're not using an external GNSS receiver. We just won't get all of the detailed information if we're coming through the OS Location Services API. We'll only get things like the horizontal and vertical accuracy. We won't get information like the PDOP or the fixed type. Okay, so let's switch over and talk about some of the things that we are going to be doing next. But I guess you have some slides to do, huh?
I do. Not many though. In fact, I think I have one for you before your next demo. One thing before we go on that, I want to show you that yet. A couple other things to point out that were in 10.4, subtle things maybe that I wanted to mention. Before 10.4, our representation of accuracy was only in meters, and you might have noticed that Doug had the ability to flip between feet and meters, so we can actually handle imperial units as well as the way the rest of the world works, which is metric. The other thing that we added was the ability for you to zoom in as far as you want to go, and that's important when working with these highly accurate GNSS receivers. Our base maps that you take offline, for the most part, if you're using an Esri base maps, cache to, depending on the area, but for most places, 1 to 4,500. We'll let you zoom and pixelate that base map because you might have additional reference layers that are vector-based that give you more context when you're using the map. All of that will get much better when Collector supports vector-based maps, which is something we'll talk about in a minute. But I wanted to point out those two additional things that are there. The one other thing that we added, I think, before I take TC's question, is that if you are, thankfully Doug didn't take any photos in Vegas and attach them to those hydrants, because who knows what he does around hydrants. is that we'll store the metadata associated with the photos now, where we didn't before as well. So you get the location information that's from the header of the photo, as well as direction information stored inside the photo. TC?
So is that estimated accuracy, is it for the 68% circular error probable, or the 95% CI?
The question is how we calculate, I'm not going to try to repeat that, how we compute the accuracy value. If it's, so let me say if it's the integrated receiver, who knows? And the best you're going to get from Apple's location service API is 5 meters. When it comes to us computing it, because we actually are reading the NEMA sentences directly for all of the receivers except for Trimble's, because Trimble, we actually use an API from them, so Trimble's deriving those, and I couldn't answer that. If there's someone from Trimble in here, maybe they could answer it. But I'm going to ask Doug. I think it's 68, but I don't know what that formula is.
That's 68% CAP.
He's hiding behind the pillar, TC, but it's 68%. As opposed to your, was it 98%
95
or 95?
95%. The federal
Yeah.
government has to report it to 95% CI. So is there, I guess, the idea sites?
No, you cannot. We've actually blocked you, TC, from submitting ideas. Yes, absolutely. Yes.
So I found when using RTK, it being really accurate down to centimetre level, that often you have to reposition your symbol or your feature points in order to correct visually against the map background. So it's got that capability to store the real position in terms of GPS and then the position against the map background.
Well, we store with it, so the question, to paraphrase, is are we storing the true position that's coming from the receiver? Because there's a way that the feature is actually symbolized on the map, right?
Well, no,
that could be different.
So what you find is the accuracy of GPS is far better than what you're getting on your background map.
Yes.
So your point will be in the wrong place visually, and you don't want to lose the GPS position because that's actually where it is. You might want to shift it by, say, a metre or a metre and a half.
We don't want you to do that to really highly accurate data, but
Well, no, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Because you need to retain the GPS position as well as the visual
Yeah.
position.
so as far as symbol offsets, I don't know. I mean, that would be hard to compute because it could be different for every individual feature. I did talk to a customer, a water customer, a few weeks ago in Orlando that actually has been capturing true position with RTK. It has their GIS position, which is the inaccurate position, and manages the two through a relationship class, of feature-to-feature relationship class. So in their maps, they represent the GIS feature location separate of that.
So
That's the only thing I could.
One thing I can add, I'll add to that is, we store the GPS, the location of the feature or vertex that you collected, and obviously that's stored in the geometry. In the GPS metadata, we actually store the raw uncorrected position. So we do have, if you elect to use those, we do have the raw uncorrected position as well as the one what we apply to the geometry.
If that's the difference, yeah. That's an interesting challenge to have, right? Yeah. So what's coming next? We have a 10.4.3 of collector that we're actually in finalizing right now. For those that do high accuracy data collection work, one of the pieces of feedback, a very controversial piece of feedback that we heard, because people have very differing opinions about it, is GPS averaging. So when you're collecting data, as Doug mentioned, you could, use the map or GPS, use the GPS for a position. Talking to TC and his friends, they say that the method of which we collect data using the GPS, they affectionately refer to as Russian roulette, because you're just taking one position. So what we're adding is the ability for you to actually set up a number of positions you'd like to average, and then we'll compute, so we'll have the ability, well, you're going to show it, so I don't need to keep explaining that. We'll compute an average, and that'll be the location of the geometry that gets added. We're going to make Doug's Vegas photos better, you'll be able to rename the photos inside of Collector as you add them. It will simply be that you're adding the name yourself by typing it in. We have designs and plans around doing more than that, where you can auto increment on naming and apply expressions to it, but that's for the future. And adding support for the SD card on the Android platform. So if you want to take big base maps offline, that you would be able to store them on the SD card, because we don't support that today. And if you weren't aware with Collector and its offline map use, because we didn't spend any time on that today, there's really two ways to take a map offline. One is that you can interactively take the map offline within the Collector user experience and take down both the feature data, which is the working area that you define, as well as the base map content, and that's interactively defining the scales or level of detail as well as the extent. And you can only take so much offline from there, but you can also cook a very big base map, and that's into what we call a TPK format. You can use ArcMap to do that, and then you can literally copy that base map over to Collector manually if you want, and you will be able to put it on the SD card. So then all you're ever taking offline is the feature data and syncing just the feature data. So I wanted to let you know about that. We're planning, it's really hard to see the yellow here, but planning to release in April. So we're close to being complete with that. So I'll hand it back to you to demo that, Doug.
All right. So this is going to be an interesting demo, because even with my Android phone, I can't get a position in here. This is like where GPS presentations go to die, I guess. But I wanted to just highlight a couple of the things that Jeff talked about. One of them is the support for GPS averaging. So from within Collector, as Jeff mentioned, typically your basic workflow is you go and you tap on the My Location button to collect a point, assuming it's within your stated accuracy. With 10.4.3, we're introducing again the concept of GPS averaging. So here I've got a setting. I can either elect to use averaging or not to, and that's for all geometry types, points, lines, polygons. If I turn that on, I can determine the number of locations I want to use. And again, all of these locations must meet the location accuracy you've specified. By default, of course, it's 5. Unfortunately, I don't think I'm going to be able to get any position. So I will give it a shot here and see.
Does Android have the settings to include?
I can't remember where it is.
You don't want to show that?
No. I don't have that kind of time. We've got more demos to get to. But anyway, so when you start collection, it's going to start averaging and getting, until it gets that required number of positions, you won't be able to use that location. And it does compute that average as well as update the location on the map while you're doing it. Oh, there we go. So now I'm just going to have to change the setting here because it's crazy slow. Anybody want to collect data within 226 feet?
Using averaging.
All right, so let's go in here. Let's update our location accuracy. I would get fired for doing this, I'm sure. So let's see if we get.
Oh no, you lost location.
All right, we're going to leave that one. So the other thing I wanted to show is the ability to work with offline. When you download a map that's offline, we actually really download two pieces of the map. we download the operational layers, your feature layers that you have in the map, and then we download the base map, which if many of you may know that you can use it in the form of a TPK. So with many Android devices, they do support SD cards. And many Android devices don't have a huge amount of storage, and some of these TPKs can get quite large. We've always supported the ability to sideload a TPK on your device and use that instead of downloading one. But we're extending that in 10.4.3 to allow you to use TPKs that you have on an external SD card. So we're just going to quickly walk through how you can go ahead and do that. So I've got two TPKs that I've got on an SD card. You can see on the left-hand side here. I'm just going to go ahead and select those. Cancel. Clearly I was already moving this. And I'm going to go ahead and move those from that location on my SD card to a specific location. And that is a well-known folder here, and we're going to put it under com.arcgis.collector files, and you can see that I have this arcgis_collector folder. I'm going to go ahead and move those over here. Now, what happens when you start up Collector, we read that and look at that location, and we'll copy and explode out those TPKs into all of the requisite parts, and then you can use those within the device. Now, what if I wasn't going to sideload? I just wanted to use, when I download the map, I just wanted to put those things onto my SD card rather than using the limited internal storage I have. So in order to do that, we're adding the capability to allow you to specify where you put your offline maps. So again, here I can see that I've got a setting here that says, hey, where do I want to put my TPKs? Do I want to use the internal or the external storage? I'm going to use the external storage, which again is the SD card here. And now when I go to download a map, I'm going to be able to pick those that I have on that SD card, but also if I elect to download a new one, it's going to be placed onto that SD card as well. So just some new capabilities that allow you to extend potentially limited devices in terms of device storage, but still be able to work offline and take a pretty big area out into the field with you. And I still have no position on this, so I think we're done.
That's because you got too many devices, Doug. Last thing I wanted to mention is what's coming next after that. We're actually starting to build the next generation experience of Collector right now. And this is going to take us all year. It's a big project. If you were in the plenary of the Dev Summit, you saw some of that being talked about. We're building on top of the new Runtime 100 architecture. We have some dependencies that we need new functionality from them before we can release it. But what does this new runtime bring us for starters? It brings us better maps. So one of the most requested features we've had with Collector is, why don't my labels show up on my web map? And that's because the runtime doesn't support it. So we're adding that because they're included in the new runtime. Some of the advanced symbology. So in the Fire community, like I talked about earlier, they use a standard symbology model called FIMIT, a Fire Incident Mapping Template. And in there they use advanced symbology. That symbology includes hashed line symbols, not really that advanced to be honest, but the feature service hadn't really supported that, nor had the runtime. We're getting that capability as well, as with vector-based maps, but we're doing a lot of work to improve the user experience as well. And we will go through a series of betas with this. So as most of you are using Collector today, we really want you to join and be a part of that beta program. And we'll announce it and through blog articles and whatnot, so you'll be able to join up online. It'll be probably later this summer when we get to that Well, hopefully sooner if I can push Doug a little bit, but I'm that angry guy. We talked about this already, support for editing z-values. We've adding the support for pre-planned offline workflows. That includes being able to not just pre-cook like you can with desktop, but have an experience where both the base map and those operational layers can be cooked offline and do that inside of ArcGIS Online. So then you could have a list of downloadable maps that you can get to. Last thing I wanted to mention there is smarter forms. So how many people here have heard about Arcade? Everybody. Arcade's pretty cool from the context of labeling and rendering, but it's going to get really exciting when we bring it through the platform for forms. So we've got a development project underway that brings the logic capabilities of Arcade through the experience of authoring inside a Pro or ArcGIS Online, so that they're included in the web map spec, and you can take advantage of them inside of Pro, inside of web editing, within ArcGIS Online, and consume it inside of Collector. Again, that's a long ways away. That's next year. In fact, let's take a look at, you weren't gonna demo, you're done demoing. You did a lot of demos, that's great, Doug. Let's take a look at that schedule a bit, because there's an important thing I wanna mention here. So Collector at the top with the big blue arrow, that's our existing code base for Collector, and we have, 10.4.1 that we've done, and I think we even had a 10.4.2. Now 10.4.3 we're talking about here in April. It'll be near the end of April, I'm sure, by the time we release. And then I've got an asterisk beside it. We will probably have a 10.4.4. I'm just assuming we will on the existing code base. But very, very minor improvements there. Now we've started our development on the new code base, and we're affectionately calling it Collector X. And we may continue to call it Collector X and put it in the store as Collector X, right? Because one of the things that's really important as we move forward is that we don't want to disrupt the workflows that you have with Collector today. And if we were to just completely change the user experience or change the way that Collector worked, and you had an auto update on your phone, it wouldn't just be angry me, it would be angry all of you. And we don't want that. So we're actually thinking that Collector, as we move forward and we start to get out betas and we get updates through our runtime team, that when we go to that very final release of it, we might put it in the store for a while as Collector X, so it can run side by side with Collector that you have today. And then eventually, as we go to migrate off of that, it becomes Collector again. So hopefully that makes sense to everyone. So that's our roadmap, and that's what's new and what's coming. We've run out of time, but we have a few minutes to take any questions. No, TC, come on, man. Yes, go ahead. Oh, yeah, that's a great point. So we really do the basics with Collector today, and there's a lot more that we want to do, including support for offsetting and using laser rangefinders. How many people want offsetting with laser rangefinders? Okay, number of you. We have a whole host of other things we want to do in Collector beyond that. How many of you would like us to expose that, that backlog list so you can see it and comment on it? I guess most everybody would want that, right? Yeah. Any other questions? Yes.
What's about the user levels? So can the user level 1 download webmaps or TPKs?
The question was about user levels. Collector requires a level 2 license because its primary value is in editing of data. We have other mobile applications that support a level 1 license, and one to look at, it's already in beta, is Explorer for ArcGIS, because this year with Explorer you can take maps offline and visually look at the map and even mark up on top of it. It's out in beta net right now, and it supports offline map use. So you can go to Explorer for email Explorer for ArcGIS at Esri.com and join that beta. In fact, the product manager's back in the corner there, going like this. Chris is his name. Yep.
When you collect any new feature, at what point during that process is it actually for the location where
Oh, that's a good question. I always get tripped up on that myself. I don't know if everybody heard that question, but it's at one. Yeah. At one point, especially with high accuracy, when is it taking that actual position? Well, it's going to be clear with averaging, right? Yeah. But overall, is it at the start or is it at the end, right when you hit submit?
So the process of collecting the geometry is once you, for example, assuming you're within location accuracy, the minute you tap on that get my current location button, that's the moment at which we capture it. You can continue to fill out the form, you can take attachments, you can go for an hour. We will not update that point unless you tell us that we need to.
Now,
so it's not related to the submission, it's just related to the moment of capture. Now, on points, we do, as an optimization from an efficiency perspective, when you say, hey, I'm going to create a water valve and collect a water valve, we show you the form and we immediately start trying to get a location for you. And if you're within accuracy, we will use that location, but you will see that on the map.
Yeah.
So that's just an efficiency thing where we try and start one right away. But again, you could update that at any point in time.
Yeah, and with the map. How many people here would like us to have a setting where you can't update the location with the map and only use the GPS? Only one person? Okay, we're never doing that then, sorry. TC, one last question. Oh man, I should have said no.
The averaging that you talked about earlier, you said that's for all features, so I imagine that's for point features. Does that allow for average vertices within lines and polygons?
So the question was, averaging, is it for points, also for lines and polygons? So on a per vertex basis, yes. So you would average each vertex. Now obviously the one caveat is if you're doing collection via streaming, obviously we're not doing it in that case. But if you're doing location by location, it applies to line vertices and polygon vertices as well.
Can you combine the two, so you can have a polygon that's got straight lines and then you've got a little bit of irregular geometry?
So the question was, can I sort of, if I'm working on a regular boundary that's potentially man-made, and I only need to collect sort of 2 points for that edge, but then I need to walk along the water course or something like that, can I use both hey, I want to use specific locations and then I can stream it where I'm working along that irregular feature? And the answer is yes, you can do both.
The other thing you can do is say it's a linear feature, and you're going along, you capture a section of linear feature, and then you need to stop and capture a point feature. You can finish that collection, you can capture the point feature, you can tap on the line feature and edit it, and then go and resume walking if you want. But it's always going to use that end point of the line. You couldn't flip back to the start point of the line or any other point within it.
So nesting won't be supported?
Nesting won't be supported? I don't think so. No, we don't have a plan to do that.
It is, on the one point for where does it start? By default, it starts in the last point. You can start by tapping on a specific vertex. Like if you wanted to start back at the first vertex, you can and stream from there. Continue to add geometry.
Yeah, that's true. I guess
and we are, from the nesting perspective, we're listening to you guys. Is that something that's interesting, where you guys need to do that sort of work of collecting points while you're collecting a line feature? Is that something interesting to you guys?
In our agency it is, yeah.
Okay. How about everybody else?
Anybody else show a hand?
Most people left now, but yeah, back there.
Okay, so a few of you. Okay, that's good.
Okay, well, that's good.
Thanks.
You got to do it now, Doug. All right, thank you, everyone. Thanks for coming.